Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Remember this tech. I'm going to be rebuilding one of my old computers today. i7 Gen 3 3770 quad core CPU, gigabyte motherboard. So I ordered this motherboard off of eBay and it came in the mail and it came in this postal box. It's bubble wrapped, so that's a good start. Oh, check this out. Not only was it bubble wrapped, but it was put into a bubble wrapped pack as well. And inside, the anti-static bag is always a good first step. So, the Gigabyte GA-H67 Alpha UD3HB3. So this is the Gigabyte board that I bought and I had back in the day. It's going to be the basis for my i7 Gen 3 3770 CPU build. As you can see, it's packed full of features. Please feel free to stop the video at any time to get a closer look at anything you want. It's packed full of features even though it's close to being 10 years old now. First look at this board. It's supposedly used. There's not a speck of dust on it, knock on wood. It looks pristine actually. There's even a CPU socket cover in place to protect the pins. Oh, one other thing. Sometimes when you order a board on, it doesn't come with this. It's used to pull or whatever. But this one did. And we're going to put this aside carefully and get the other parts out. The i7 quad core Gen 3 3770 chip. Pretty powerful back in the day. 8 threads, 4 cores, can clock up to 3.4 gigahertz. That's going to be the basis of my build today. And I bought this motherboard for $40. And I have 4 sticks of DDR3, 2 gig sticks, 8 gig, and those came in the haul that I bought recently for $100. But the RAM is just part of that, so I'm reusing it. I have my old Corsair power supply, 750 watt TX power supply. And of course, yeah, it's not modular, but you know what? It works, it's good. And I'm going to use it because this is a $150 build, so we have to reuse parts. Don't throw them away, save them, reuse them. What I did have to buy though is I don't want to use a stock cooler. I want to use something a little bit beefier in case I want to overclock, a little bit more silent. So I got this True Spirit 120 Rev B, and it fits the Intel 1155 socket. It's pretty huge, and now it's $20 on Amazon. And I needed a case. Well, I got this Thermaltake V100 case on Best Buy on sale for $40 shipped, and it's got some cool features. This is a magnetic screen over the vents, and you can take it off and clean it. And it's got one on the bottom as well. It's got one case fan in here. It's got front USB ports here for 2.0 and standard. It's got audio, power buttons, 2 free 5.5 inch bays. Let's crack it open and look. Oops. There's another filter inside on the inside the case door. So what we have here, probably what I don't really like about this would be that down below here, you put your power supply in here and then you run your cables up through the various holes, and I'm not really a fan of that. But it's what I found for $40. Comes with all the stanchions, standoffs, some case screws, some zip ties, and thin motherboard connectors for USB, and a large fan here. And you can put a fan up top or in the front too. So that's my case. And we're gonna prep this board and we're gonna stick it in the case. The CPU is only gonna sit flat, flush against the pins one way. It's a good design. Some motherboards have arrows on how you have to align one corner of the edge of the CPU towards the edge here, and this one has it as well. It has an arrow pointing to this left side and bottom, and so does the chip, and the corners match up, and that's how you seat the CPU. I've got some CPU paste here that I wanted to try out. So the cooler I bought had thermal paste. That's a good thing if you're trying to keep your build down to $150 or $100 or whatever. You make sure the cooler you get has thermal paste with it. So that's how you can save a few bucks. If you don't have any of your own left over from other builds, that is. So if you're slotting your RAM, you have dual channel, you want to make sure that you put them in the same slots. These are color coded. You can't mess them up too bad. And then when you hear them pop into place and snap in place, you're good to go. Make sure they're firm though. And it's best to run the same latency, same types of RAM. But in order to save a few bucks, I'm mixing the Hionix and the Kingston. And it's probably not the best idea. But plenty of you out there probably have bought sticks of RAM and you can only afford, a certain amount at one time, and then later on, you found something on sale and then you bought them later. So we all have done this, and that's just how it goes. So hopefully it'll run, pass the mem test and such. Next step is to set up the cooler, and then we're going to configure it and attach it to the motherboard with the back plate. This heatsink fan comes with their own thermal paste. How good it is, not sure, but it can save you $1 or $2. Thermalright True Spirit 100 Rev B. 100 Rev B. Now that I got another cooler, hopefully this one has the right brackets for this motherboard. The retention brackets for this socket 1155 board that I was rebuilding for my gaming PC that I had 10 years ago didn't come with the right brackets. So I ordered this one, the SE224 XT, like $26 US. It's got the same similar setup as a Cooler Master 212 Hyper. It's like $15 cheaper. In the box, you got some stanchions, screws for different setups, and we have some plastic risers, fan clips, and like the other one, you have a motherboard back plate. This one seems thinner than the other one, but if all goes well, we'll actually have something that works this time. Let's dig into the instructions. And, it comes with some Frost X25 thermal paste, which I probably won't be using, but it's good to know if you want to save a few bucks. It comes with thermal paste. They've got one whole set that covers the 1700, 1200, and the 1155X mounting system. I didn't get a good feel for the last non-name brand system cooler I bought, so if this one sucks, I'm just going to bite the bullet and buy a Hyper 212 or Nocturna. I like both of them. I had no problems with them previously, and I would definitely buy them again.
Do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my face. Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like a card, never change. Play the game that we say. I need a break. I'm staying strong. Need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I'm staying strong. Need to move on to be what I want.
You finger tighten these, obviously. They're only going to go down so far, but it'll prevent you from damaging anything, warping the board, etc. And you might do a tiny nudge with the screwdriver if you want, but you know, just be careful, or you end up being with another problem, which is a motherboard issue, you know, being you broke the PCB or something. So we've got next, it says put your glasses on, old man, and then I go like this, put my glasses on, and I can see. I need to position this to see if it's going to fit first on here, one way or the other. And it mounts here, the screws, and that's how you secure it onto the chip. And it looks like we're good to go. So I always like to check the copper heatsink. Make sure that it's basically clear of any abrasions, any adhesive material that the protective sticker, you know, was covering. Use some isopropyl alcohol on there. Anyways, don't do that like I did. I slept with the thing. I always seat my heatsink and see how it's going to sit first, because, well, I want to see how the thermal paste kind of spreads on there, and then I take it off very gently, because the suction, you know, you might pull it out of the socket, your CPU, you know. Okay, got that. One side, and then line up the other. They're spring loaded, so just be careful your screwdriver doesn't slip off of the heatsink screw and smack into the board. It could damage your components and ruin your whole build. So I do one side and then I do the other because, well, you want to put equal tension on it when you're tightening it so you don't over torque one side versus the other. Slowly tightening it, make sure it's firm contact, and you're good to go. The one thing I really want to see is like manufacturers of fans putting direction for the fan blades on how they spin and which direction the airflow will go, so you know which way to put it on the dang heatsink when you mount it on there without having to guess. It's such a frustrating whole deal, you know. And I'm thinking this is how it's going to be here. Like this. And the fan kind of, you want to line it up and then you kind of clip it onto the heatsink itself. And inside it came with the standoffs, the screws for the motherboard, and some zip ties for cable management. One fan, the back of the case here, and they neatly have everything tied up. Put that over here for now. Front USB 3.0 header attachment for the front panel. Audio and the USBs. And these ones are pushed outs. They look like they just gotta fold them out here. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm gonna let you in a little secret. I'm going to put in a dual slot video card in this build. One of the cards that I had, the exact card I had in my previous, so I need both of these out. Might as well do this prior to putting the board in, because by the time you get in there, sometimes you're going to be ripping this around and you might rip something out and snag it on your motherboard caps and bust them. Bust the cap, get it? So all the stanchions for the motherboard are already in place. Another thing, make sure you put your IO shield on before you slide this in, because if you don't, you're not getting it in after the fact, and you're gonna have to take it out and do it all over again. So don't do like many others have done prior. Some pop in easy, some do not. Watch your fingers depending on your case. You may or may not cut yourself depending how crappy the edges are. This one, not too bad, this case. So we'll give that A+ so far. And line it up with your IO plate, and then line up the board with the stanchions. And if I didn't mention it before, this case cost $40 on Best Buy, and I consider that a deal because other cases were not cheap anywhere, and I couldn't find a good deal anywhere, and that was shipped. So this is the best one, and the rest are just crap, pretty much no name. So I just didn't feel like taking a chance. I took a chance on the CPU cooler heatsink fan, and look where it got me. I had to wait and get another one. This might not work because there's no header on this board for this. Word to everyone, look up your motherboard pinout before you try to eyeball it with bad eyes like me. Here's USB. There's tons of USB headers on here, and there's one of the pins, there's no pin in here and it's solid, so if you're gonna line it up, you would line it up with that in mind. It should be keyed and you just put it in. Hard disk drive LED here, plug that in. Reset switch, except there's no front audio header on this board for some reason. No USB front pin header on this board either. But anyways, jumping fast forward, I got one of these off of Amazon. It's a NQ100 Lexer SSD, 240 gig. Paid $17, and I'm gonna put it in this build and see if see if we can't get some speed out of it. The SATA 3 ports on this board are the white here, and that's what I want to use for maximum speed on this hard drive. And I'll populate this on, SATA 0. I still have to feed the power supply through the back, and I'm gonna have to redo these cables, but for now I'm gonna turn this case on its side. This case here is a unique design, and when I pull this back panel off, you'll see, you'll either love it or you'll hate it. And that is because we have down here, this is where the power supply goes in. You slide it in and secure it in the back, and your cable management comes through here, up in here, and this is where the drive bays mount. So you can technically get to your 3.5 inch bays, which are on the rails here, unless you pull the back case off, unless you know where you're going to put it. But the 2.5 inch Lexar drive here, I'm going to mount to this case here, right here, and it's flat flush mount on this. So for this build, I am also using a power supply that I had previously. This is from my old system and I kept. It is a Corsair 750 power supply, single rail. The kicker is that it's non-modular, and this is just so much fun to cable manage. If you know where I'm going with this, you're gonna have to feed everything through these holes. But maybe I can, with this design, you could just stuff everything in the bays, you know, and this, you won't see it. So, decided to mount this thing the way it wanted to go and put the cables in the back, and I'll flip it around and I'll show you. I was able to actually move the 8-pin power for the board, motherboard. I was able to feed it through with just enough room, and as you see here, I fed it up through here. This is 8-pin, and over here I've got 2 PCI Express 6-pin, the ATX 24-pin, and I just need to feed SATA for the drive power here. So here we have your motherboard power and my PCI Express, and well, I wanted to hide a lot of cables, but it may not have that luxury. I haven't really figured out how I want to do this. Suffice to say that I kind of want to just have minimal cables coming through here. I'm not a perfectionist, and I'm sure as hell not a showman for, motherboards. I like to keep it clean for airflow. This is the other part of the build. This is the Radeon 7950 HD 3 gig dual slot card that I have, that I had in my old system 10 years ago, I think, 10 years ago. 2 DVI out and a HDMI and a DisplayPort adapter. Power, PCI Express, Should have enough length. All right, let's see if it powers on. Turn the power on, the power supply. See if it smokes. I haven't tested this RAM. It came from the $100 loot haul that I got from someone. All right, we're not getting a post. So A could be to check the board, but could be anything. Got power on the board. Start by pulling the RAM. I can't get auto set to work, which means there's no signal from anything. Nothing, nothing, nothing. So we're gonna shut the power off. Pull the video card. Test from there. Looks nice and new to me. I'm led to believe that the system has an older BIOS rev. Anything below F9 for BIOS for this board will not see or support the 3770 chip Gen 3 that I have in here. So what I had to do is buy a 2500S i5 quad core running at 2.7 gigahertz, and it's supposed to be able to run on the F4 BIOS and be recognized by this board. So I'm going to pull off this cooler and heatsink and fan assembly, pop out my chip, the 3770, put in the 2500S i5 that I bought from eBay for $9, and hopefully it works. Hopefully the chip works, and hopefully I can get into the computer, flash the BIOS, and then hopefully it'll work. Reapply heatsink, thermal paste, and let's secure this to the board, shall we? Then we can get the fan on. All right, got the chip in, got the cooler back on. Double check the connections, power, make sure everything's good. Power on. Power on. Wait, we have it. We have it! Did you see? It came up. Yeah. So it's gotta be what I was saying. Probably has an older BIOS rev, and I farted around and I didn't get into the BIOS to check it. So we're gonna have to. Okay, so I didn't catch it, but I put in a pre-cloned SSD in the system. It's got Windows 10 Pro on here. And it's probably going to give me crap because I pulled it from a build that I did in a previous video with the HP 8600 workstation. I got fingers crossed, and we'll see how it goes. I might have to reactivate the system, but for testing purposes, hopefully I don't need to. I am in Windows. We have 8 gig of RAM installed with a 2500 i5. So it was the chip, like I was saying. $9 fix. And a 5-day wait. Let's use the Lexar drive that I have in here. Yeah, I know that's cheap, but yeah, I was going for a cheap build. So we got the BIOS program up here, and I got a few motherboard programs installed, software, etc. So this shows my board. And we're gonna do from server, and we want USA. Let's see if we can even connect. And of course it sees it, recognizes my board, and it says, hey, we got version F8, you want to do it? And I'm like, yes, because you know, I'm all confident about that. Yep, that's fine. Freeze. Because I want to be able to put in my i7 chip. Here's the tricky part. Here, always hold your breath when it's writing. You pray nothing happens. You just go with it and let it do its magic, you know. But I gotta say, as having just worked on the HP 8600 workstation, the Xenon system, this system, even with the 2500S i5 right now, is so much faster. It's like night and day. The Gen 3 chip, Intel. Almost done with the BIOS. I'm gonna have to restart the system now. Let's do this. So on the reboot, I went into the BIOS just to poke around, show you a few of the settings. This motherboard, you can do advanced frequency settings. You can set the block, tells you temp, vCore. All those should be slightly adjustable in here. And like if you go in here, you can set the clock ratio if it's unlocked. Might be able to push through certain things. Core features, shows you what its limits are. Well, theoretical 65 watts. And that's what the memory set for auto for now. And you can come in here and do the memory settings. You can even tweak the multipliers and try to overclock your RAM. And you should be able to tweak them in increments as well. For the DRAM, it's got a fairly feature-rich for its day. Advanced BIOS, you can set your priorities, everything else. I don't have a CD-ROM in here either. But standard BIOS, I don't know what extreme hard drive is. Like, it doesn't tell me. And, you know, some of the USBs weren't working, and I'm going to have to check that out. But it says they're enabled, so it must have been a driver issue or something I'd have to install. But they're all enabled, so I don't know what's going on. Why is this IADE? It should be HCI. I'll watch it won't boot now after I do that. Sometimes that happens. Should have had that set prior to booting, but should be smart enough to figure this out on its own, but not always the case. So we're running at 25C for the CPU. Cool, icy cool, chilling. The heat sink that I have on there and the thermal paste. So that's just at the 2500S i5. So I'm going to save and boot. So once this comes through, let's see what it boots at. Hopefully the HCI setting that I turned on is not going to cause a boot issue. So 1000, 2, 1000, 3, 1000, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,